Okay, good work, everybody. We had a little while ago a chassid visiting us from Pittsburgh. His name is Bezalel Chabad, and he really made a quite impression on all of us because he shared chassidus, very deep concepts on chassidus in a very simple language. And after he visited, I got a lot of calls. Hey, can I get this guy's number? I want to really. I think I could do this too. I want to learn it. And it reminded me a lot of a chassidus to talk about tonight, named Yekusiel Liepler. Yekusiel Liepler is generally not given such a he's not given such a high praise among Chabad Chassidim because of the following story. Happened was he was a salt merchant living in a town called Liepler, and this chassid passed by the town, and he shared a discourse of the Alter Rebbe. Rabbi Yekusiel was so amazed by this discourse that he traveled to the Alter Rebbe. And in those days, there was a real order how Chassidim would connect with their Rebbe. They didn't just walk into the Rebbe and just speak to him. Moshe Levin famously, Chassid the Alter Rebbe, says in Hayom Yom, spent 3 years prepare himself to see the Alter Rebbe. After Alter Rebbe spoke, he spent another many years to work on what Alter Rebbe told him. But Yekusiel Liepler was so excited about what he had heard, this discourse, he wanted to right away speak to Alter Rebbe. But they told him, you can't go in, you have to prepare first. There's no order over here. So he just asked people where the Rebbe's residence was, and he climbed up the wall of the Alter Rebbe's home, and he jumped in through the window. And the Alter Rebbe then was wearing Benotam tefillin. And he says that he cried out to the Alter Rebbe, and he says, Rebbe, chop off left side. Chop off my Yetzer Hara. Let me lose my Yetzer Hara. So the Alter Rebbe said to Hashem, you, Hashem, give life to everyone. That's what he said, and those words caused a tremendous energy in this chassid, so much so that sometimes he would just feel so excited he would dance with anyone in the street, whether it's Jewish or not Jewish. That didn't matter. When he got that inspiration, he would just get up and he would get up and dance. He used to say, Chassid Prishol, the chassid has come, chassid Ashli, chassid has gone. He felt sometimes like the chassid in him had arrived and the chassid in him had gone away. So Chassidim didn't respect him so much because it seemed like all of his spiritual achievements that he had, his open heart and mind, it wasn't because of his own efforts. It was given to him by this blessing of the Alter Rebbe. And it wasn't, and Chabad Chassidus emphasizes how important it is to make your own effort to serve Hashem. And here he had gotten this as a gift. That's why, in general, among Chassidim, the time of the Alter Rebbe, he wasn't considered to be on a higher level. But I want to share with you another part of which is not so famous about the same chassid, which you'll see that that was just his early beginnings as a chassid. He lived from the time of the Alter Rebbe until the time of the Rebbe Marash. So there's a lot more to the story. But before we get there, I don't want to forget to tell you that when the Rebbe once repeated the story about how Yekusiel Liepler had times when he would, it says in Yom Yom, there was times he would daven Shachris, Mincha, and Ma'ariv one after the other, because he would daven Shachris until it was Mincha time. He would daven Mincha until it was Ma'ariv time. So all day was consumed with davening. It says in Yom Yom on Rosh Kislev. So that's true that he had this kind of revelation, but the Rebbe said that there are times he didn't have that revelation. He had to push himself to put his finger on the siddur and to say the words because he didn't feel that revelation. And the Rebbe said this happens to everyone. They repeated this story, and the Rebbe says this happens to everyone. That the chassid comes and the chassid goes. Sometimes you feel the inspiration, sometimes you don't. The Rebbe said it happens to me. The Rebbe looked at Rabbi Yoel Khan. The Rebbe said it happens to you. The Rebbe looked at Rabbi Shem Tov. Said it happens to you. Something happens to everybody, and the important thing to know is even when you don't feel that great energy, that you still have to show up and do the right thing. So that moment, that blessing did open up for him his heart and mind, but he still was not able to study chassidus in a very sophisticated way. He was very simple, both in his knowledge of the revealed parts of Torah and his knowledge of chassidus. Very simple, and he did make quite an impression on not just on the Jews in his town, but on the non-Jews as well, because of his honesty. There was one occasion where he made such a obvious sacrifice for honesty that everyone in the town was talking about it, and this news spread to the whole region of his honesty. All the non-Jews are talking about it, and the Alter Rebbe said, in the merit of this great kiddush Hashem that you caused, I want to give you a blessing to have a long life. But because from his perspective, that wasn't such a blessing. He said, Rebbe, 1 second, depends. I don't want to have a life of a farmer who doesn't know about godliness, doesn't see godliness, which is a deep story, because on the surface, like, he's giving you a gift, just take the gift. But instead, he said, no, I don't want to take the gift, because unless I could understand and appreciate godliness, because for him, that's what life was about. Life was about his ability to absorb chassidus and to really connect with Hashem. So he wasn't being an ingrate. On the contrary, he was very in touch with what real life was about. And therefore, for him, that wouldn't be life. That's a different subject. Anyway, the Alter also wanted to give him a blessing for wealth. He says, I don't want that blessing, because that blessing may disturb me from my learning chassidus and my service of Hashem. And he didn't accept that blessing either. Anyways, Rabbi Yekusiel was a chassid of the Alter Rebbe for about 15 years, and the Alter Rebbe passed away, and he was 40 years old. And so apparently the story happened when he climbed the Alter Rebbe's balcony when he was 25. Anyways, he's 40 years old, and he's in his town, and the Liepler Rebbe is now the Rebbe. And the Liepler Rebbe's chassidus was a whole different style than the Alter Rebbe. Is famous that the Liepler Rebbe's chassidus was more in the way of Bina. Liepler Rebbe is called, among Chabad Chassidim, is called the Wide River, because he took the teachings of the Alter Rebbe, which were just transmitted in a very brief form, and he developed those teachings in length and breadth and depth. That there's from one teaching, there's a wide river. So the Liepler Rebbe's chassid, one of his chassidim, was passing by this town, a young guy, and he's sharing a discourse the Liepler Rebbe gave. And we see Liepler is listening, and he doesn't understand. And it bothered him, he didn't understand. So he asked this chassid, later he repeated this event, this pivotal event in his life, to a chassid named Rabbi Shmuel Ber. He says to him, you have to understand, I was 15 years by the Alter Rebbe. I worked so hard to understand chassidus, and I don't understand this little chickadee, he says, this little boy who's just repeating and repeating. It's like his mouth is a stream. He's sharing chassidus, and I don't understand what he's talking about. And it bothered me. So I asked him to repeat it to me again, and I couldn't get it. It bothered me so much that I decided I have to travel to Liepler Rebbe. And he did. He travels to Liepler Rebbe. He arrives on a Wednesday. The Liepler Rebbe would share chassidus on Friday night and then on Shabbos day. So when he came that Friday night, the Liepler Rebbe shared a discourse. He was able to understand the discourse. But the next day on Shabbos, Liepler Rebbe shared the Kabbalistic explanation of the discourse, which he couldn't get that. And it bothered him. And he stayed there in Lubavitch trying to understand what the Liepler Rebbe was saying. And he came into the Liepler Rebbe for private audience, and the Liepler Rebbe said that there's nothing that stands in the path of desire. When you really want, it causes your talents to develop. When you really want something, it causes your talents to develop. And he took this, the Friedrich Rebbe says about him, that the classic Chassidim Alter Rebbe, they didn't hesitate. They heard something from the Alter Rebbe, they moved immediately with that inspiration, and they didn't question what they had heard from the Alter Rebbe. So on the spot, he decided, okay, it requires effort. I'm here. Nothing stands the path of desire. I'm there. And he spent 4 months learning and learning. There was a Chassid Ephraim Smilyan, who Liepler credits with teaching him again and again. He worked really, really hard to understand the chassidus, and he managed, he said, to accustom himself to meditate about one concept for many hours. And he says after 4 months, and the teachings of the Liepler Rebbe, and the Liepler Rebbe actually wrote a book just for him, one of the deepest works in Chassidus called Imre Bina, was written just for him because that's a caliber he reached intellectually just because of his desire to understand. When the Liepler Rebbe passed away, he became a chassid of Tzemach Tzedek, and the Tzemach Tzedek actually sent his son, the Rebbe Marash, to ask a question to Yekusiel Liepler in Chassidus. To ask him a question in the book Imre Bina. Yekusiel Liepler was a very wise chassid, and he said to the Rebbe Marash, he says, I'm a merchant, and the way it works with a merchant is that the merchant gives a price, and the person if he has merchandise, he says what the price is, and the guy agrees to the price, and he pays the price, and then he gets the merchandise. So I have some merchandise that you want from me. I want to tell you what the price is. So Ramesh says, what's the price? He says, I want you to repeat to me the Maimer your father said on Shabbos, and I want you to answer whatever you're able to answer. Whatever you can't answer, I want you to go back to your father and ask. So the Ramesh agrees, and Yekusiel Liepler answered the question, said that Ramesh was a very deep answer he gave to the question, and then he shared with Yekusiel Liepler his questions on he shared with him the discourse that Tzemach Tzedek had given, and he explained that whatever he knew and whatever he didn't know, he asked his father. And it's an interesting thing that it says about Rabbi Liepler. Rabbi Liepler was once listening to a discourse of the Tzemach Tzedek, and after the discourse was over, the Tzemach Tzedek's children and Rabbi Hillel were discussing the discourse, and they had their opinion about what discourse means, and he had his opinion, and they argued about it. They went to their father, and their father said that they were right. They told Rabbi Hillel, we asked our dad said we're right. Hillel said, well, that's his opinion. Like, what do you mean that's his opinion? It's his discourse. He says, no. He says, when a Rebbe says chassidus, that's Torah coming from Mount Sinai. That's directly from God. And that's just a revelation. Now it became Torah, so everyone can understand Torah in their own way. So I could also have my opinion. That's what the Bill Parsha said. Anyway, so the Tzemach Tzedek reckoned with his ability to understand chassidus, even though Tzemach Tzedek also reckoned with his inability to understand simple things in Nigla. The Tzemach Tzedek told him he should learn every day Chumash with Rashi, translated in Yiddish. He should learn his book of ethics called Kav Yashar and translated in Yiddish. He wanted, in the language of the previous Rebbe, he wanted to give him garments. He wanted to give some garments for his neshama that he was missing, to dress him into more down-to-earth spiritual garments by telling him to learn Chumash with Rashi, to learn this book called Kav Yashar. But he remained not so knowledgeable in Nigla, but in Chassidus he was brilliant. When Tzemach Tzedek passed away, he was around 90 years old, and they didn't want to tell him how Tzemach Tzedek passed away, but he discovered, and he traveled right away to Lubavitch, and he was very emotional. He said, I don't want to hear anything until I speak to the Rebbe. He came to the Rebbe Tzemach Tzedek, to Ohel Tzemach Tzedek, and he davened there, and he fainted there, and when he woke up from his faint, he said, we have to dance. Didn't know what he meant, but what he meant was that apparently that he had discovered who the next Rebbe is. And he actually, each of the Tzemach Tzedek's children became a Rebbe in their own right. There's a Kappas Chassidim, Maganaves, each of the Chassidim Tzemach Tzedek, except for the Rebbe's great-grandfather, each of them became a Rebbe. The oldest son of Tzemach Tzedek, Baruch Shalom, did not become a Rebbe. And the tradition is that the Tzemach Tzedek had said that he should not become a Rebbe, and Der Revi Yeshuvahein in the fourth generation, it says about the Jewish people when they were in Mitzrayim, the fourth generation will return from Egypt. In a similar way, Tzemach Tzedek said in four generations, the Rebbisteve, the becoming Rebbe, will return to you personally, to your family. And sure enough, our Rebbe became the Rebbe 4 generations, the Merash, the Cashapp, and the Friedrich Rebbe, and then our Rebbe became the Rebbe, who was a direct descendant of Baruch Shalom, the oldest son of the Tzemach Tzedek. Anyway, so Yekusiel Liepler, he wanted to know who the Rebbe is. So he asked each of the children of Tzemach Tzedek to share chassidus. Parenthetically, the Rebbe once said that each of the children of the Tzemach Tzedek was called a Rebbe, even though in general there is a concept called Melech Daber Lador. There's one leader of the generation, but yet there is a title that's given to all the children of the Tzemach Tzedek. They're all called an Admur. The Rebbe said that we've learned from this that every Jew should not be afraid of that title of Rebbe. Every Jew should say, I could also, there's something of the Rebbe that I have in myself as well. That's the Rebbe said we should learn from this fact that each of the children of the Tzemach Tzedek became a Rebbe in their own right. We should learn that there's something of the Rebbe that we're supposed to project. Anyways, that was just parenthetical. So he went to each child of Tzemach Tzedek and asked them to share chassidus. When he got to Marash was just wearing a yarmulke without a hat. He says, please put on your hat and please share chassidus. And the Rabbi Marash told him a mimer, and the Yekusiel Liepler was convinced that this indeed was the Rebbe, and that is so the Altar's blessing to him to have long life was indeed fulfilled, and he lived to deep in the 90s, which was very especially unusual in those days. Either way, we see from the stories that on the one hand he was given a gift from the Alter Rebbe. On the other hand, he didn't just accept this gift. He really worked on himself to go beyond what he was given. He worked very hard to open, and with his effort, he was able to understand a whole different level of chassidus, and something that we could learn from. As I was mentioning before, that as Rabbi Bezalel, who visited us for Shishal Pesach, he's telling us, guys, you got to work on this. You'll understand it. That there's this deep stuff in chassidus that we take for granted to say the words, but don't really think about what the words mean. But the knowledge is out there. We just have to plug ourselves in and decide to learn, and then we could really achieve a deep understanding of this gift Hashem has given us of chassidus. As the Tzemach Tzedek said, that when Hashem made the world, there was a tree of knowledge and the tree of life. And Hashem said, no one should eat from the tree of knowledge. It should only and after Shabbos came and the sin was already done, so they weren't able to eat from the tree of life. But the Tzemach Tzedek said, now before Mashiach comes, we have to eat from the tree of life. What's the tree of life? The tree of life is chassidus. Hashem gave us a special fruit so that we should prepare and bring the coming of Mashiach. So we have to chaparein. And that's the story I want to share. Any questions or comments or criticism? Good luck, Yuda. Good luck, Charles. Good luck, David. Good luck, Daron. Good luck, Rabbi.
Good work.